I never imagined that my 68th birthday would begin with me fumbling at the lock of a forgotten garage, the scent of rust and motor oil hanging heavy in the night air, tears blurring my vision as my son's cruel words echoed in my mind. "You're just a useless old woman, Mom. What would you even do with a real inheritance? Dad knew that." His voice, once the sweet sound of a boy I raised with all the love I had had, become cold and sharp as glass. And that was the knife that had cut deeper than anything, the realization that the boy I had loved, nurtured, and sacrificed for had hardened into someone I no longer recognized. The key in my trembling hand slid into the rusted lock, at last the metal groaning in protest, as if the building itself wanted to keep its secrets buried. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, landing on shadows that seemed too still, too deliberate. This wasn't just a place of abandonment, not entirely. But before I tell you what I saw inside, you must understand how I ended up there, homeless, broken, and betrayed, clutching a suitcase that contained the remnants of my 42-year marriage. The day had started in the attorney's office, my black funeral dress still smelling faintly of lilies from Robert's service 3 weeks earlier. Beside me, Jonathan sat tall and immaculate in his tailored suit, exuding confidence, even entitlement. Mr. Hoffman, our family attorney for decades, shuffled papers with a nervousness that should have warned me. His words were clipped, his glasses slipping down his nose as he began. "To my son, Jonathan Campbell. I leave our penthouse residence in Los Angeles and my primary investment portfolio." I froze. My breath hitched. And then came the afterthought, the cruel twist of a knife disguised as legal formality. "To my beloved wife, Susan Campbell. I leave the property located at 1420 Industrial Parkway, the garage and its contents." A garage. After 42 years of marriage, decades of loyalty, sacrifices, and love, Robert had left me a garage. The shock silenced me, but Jonathan's expression told me everything. Triumph glimmered behind his feigned solemnity, a flash of greed he couldn't quite mask. When his hand gripped my shoulder, it was not in comfort but in possession. He whispered with a rehearsed cruelty, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of you." I didn't yet understand the full betrayal, not from Robert, but from my own son. That evening, when Jonathan drove me to what I still thought of as our home, the penthouse, overlooking the glittering sprawl of Los Angeles, my suitcase felt heavier than ever. He set it down in the entryway like an unwelcome package. "It would be best if you found somewhere else to stay, Mom. The penthouse is mine now. It's in the will." I remember staring at him numb. "What do you mean?" My voice cracked like brittle glass. His tone was businesslike, dismissive. "I have colleagues coming tomorrow. We'll turn Dad's study into a home office. You can stay with Aunt Helen, or go to that garage Dad left you." His laugh, sharp and cruel, sliced through me. "What are you going to do, open a mechanic shop at your age?" Something inside me fractured. My son, my only child, had thrown me out with less compassion than a stranger might show. That night I drove aimlessly through the city until the roads grew unfamiliar, until the lights of skyscrapers gave way to the industrial district's shadows. And that was how I found myself standing before the garage, a padlock glinting under my headlights, Robert's strange inheritance in my hand. When the door creaked open, I expected dust and abandonment. Instead, my flashlight revealed 3 shrouded shapes lined with surgical precision. Vehicles. But not just any vehicles. The first glimpse of polished silver made my heart stop. I pulled the cover away, revealing a 1964 Aston Martin DB5, the kind James Bond himself might have driven, its chrome gleaming like moonlight. My knees nearly gave out. Robert, my quiet, practical Robert, had hidden a secret life from me. The next cover fell to reveal a deep blue 1956 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, flawless and regal, its curves whispering of eras long gone. And then the third, a Ferrari 275 GTB4, its scarlet paintwork glowing in the dim light like a drop of living fire. Each one accompanied by a leather portfolio of provenance records and proof that these weren't merely cars, they were treasures worth fortunes. I could barely breathe. What is this, Robert? That was when I saw the envelope taped neatly to the wall, my name written in Robert's steady hand. I tore it open with shaking fingers. His words poured over me like a tide, an apology, a confession, a revelation. He had known for 6 years that his heart was failing. He had built this collection in silence, investing not just in cars but in properties, accounts, and securities, all hidden from Jonathan. And why? Because he had seen what I refused to see. He had seen the hardness growing in our son. He had seen the dismissiveness, the cold entitlement. And he had feared what would happen to me if Jonathan inherited everything. Robert wrote, "I wanted to give Jonathan a test. If he showed compassion, if he cared for you, perhaps you would share this wealth with him. But if he showed his true colors, then this legacy is your shield, your independence. These cars, the investments, the cottage in Carmel, they are your future, your freedom. My final gift." I wept until the paper blurred. My husband had hidden millions, not out of cruelty, but out of love. And in one brutal night, Jonathan had proven Robert right. I curled up on the leather sofa in the adjoining office, the cars gleaming silently in the dark like guardians of a future I didn't yet understand. The next morning, sunlight revealed more secrets: climate control systems, modern LED lighting, and even clothes and provisions Robert had tucked away from me. My practical, meticulous husband had thought of everything. But the cruelest irony was that my son, who had mocked me as a useless old woman, had been handed what he thought was wealth, the penthouse, while sneering at the garage. He had no idea that behind its rusted doors lay treasures worth more than his entire inheritance. And so I began to plan. I called the number Robert had left me for Marcus Weatherby, his trusted dealer. Within hours, a distinguished silver-haired man arrived carrying with him not just knowledge but reassurance. He confirmed what Robert had written: these cars alone were worth over $12 million. And that was only the beginning. As Marcus left that day, I stood alone among the vehicles, my heart heavy but no longer hopeless. For the first time since Robert's funeral, I felt something stir inside me, not just grief, but determination. Jonathan thought he had stripped me of everything. He thought I had been reduced to nothing. But he was wrong. He had underestimated me, and Robert had given me the tools to prove it. The next day, I returned to the penthouse one final time, dressed in a navy pantsuit Robert had secretly purchased for me. Jonathan barely looked up as I entered, already planning renovations to flip the home we had built together. To him, it was nothing but a commodity. To me, it was sacred ground now desecrated. When he snapped at me to hurry, as I packed Robert's belongings, I looked at my son. Really looked at him for the first time. And I saw not the boy I had raised, but the man Robert had feared, impatient, greedy, blind, to the very love that had built everything around him. Yet even then, part of me ached for him. He wasn't just cruel, he was lost. But Robert had left me with a choice, and I would not squander it. That night, in the quiet of the garage, I pressed my hand to Robert's letter once more and whispered into the stillness. "You knew Robert. You knew him better than I did. You knew me better than I knew myself. And now I will honor your gift, not just by surviving, but by living." The useless old woman my son had mocked was gone. In her place was a woman with a secret fortune, a hidden strength, and a heart ready to face what came next. The morning after my visit to the penthouse, I woke on the leather sofa in the garage office with a strange sense of clarity. For weeks I had been drifting, my days consumed by grief and confusion, but now, surrounded by Robert's secrets carefully laid bare, I felt anchored for the first time. The cars, the safe, the cottage in Carmel I had yet to visit. All of it was a map Robert had drawn for me, and now I had to decide if I was brave enough to follow it. I dressed in one of the new outfits Robert had quietly purchased and left for me: a soft blouse, tailored slacks, and a simple necklace that matched my wedding band. Small details, but they mattered. They reminded me that I wasn't just some discarded woman wandering aimlessly with a suitcase. I was Susan Campbell, wife, mother, and now the sole guardian of a legacy my husband had built in silence. That morning I called Marcus again, and he arrived with the same gentle professionalism as before. Over thermos coffee in the office, he explained more of Robert's strategy. "Your husband was remarkably precise," Marcus said. "He wanted you to have assets that were not just valuable on paper, but resilient. The cars are investments, yes, but also symbols. He wanted you to have something tangible, something beautiful. I nodded, though my heart ached. Why didn't he ever tell me? Marcus paused before answering, his kind eyes searching my face. He was afraid, not of you, but of what might happen if others discovered too soon. He wanted you protected, Mrs. Campbell. You were his compass, his anchor. The words struck me like a blow. For 42 years I had believed I was the one leaning on Robert. Yet all along, in ways I hadn't seen, he had been leaning on me. My throat tightened, and I had to look away, blinking hard against the tears. Later that day, after Marcus left, I went through the safe again. This time I forced myself to read every page to truly absorb the scope of what Robert had done. Properties scattered across states, trusts structured with surgical precision, stock portfolios, bonds, all of it carefully documented. At the bottom of one thick file, I found the deed to the Carmel cottage. My hand shook as I traced the address with my finger. Robert had bought it 4 years earlier. He had prepared a home for me, a sanctuary, away from the city, away from Jonathan's shadow. I knew then what I had to do. That night, Jonathan called. His tone was sharp, impatient, as if I were nothing more than an employee who had failed to file paperwork on time. "Mom, you need to come collect the rest of your things. The designers are coming tomorrow. The penthouse is mine now. It's time you moved on." There was no apology, no remorse, not even a sliver of recognition for what he had done to me. Just more demands. For the first time, I heard his voice clearly, not as my son's, but as a stranger's. "All right, Jonathan," I said softly, calm, in a way that unsettled even me. "I'll be there in the morning." And I was. At precisely 8:45, I walked into the penthouse with my head held high, wearing the navy pantsuit Robert had left me. Jonathan barely looked up, too preoccupied with his phone. The apartment already felt gutted, not just by the designers, but by his presence. Family photos gone, furniture replaced by cold chrome and glass warmth, stripped away in the pursuit of value. He gestured at boxes stacked haphazardly. "Your stuff's in there. Try to be done by 9:30. I've got meetings." I wanted to scream at him, to shake him and demand, "How did you become this man? Where did my son go?" But instead, I bent to the boxes and began sorting. Inside, Robert's belongings lay crammed together as though they were trash: his books, his pens, his sweaters that still held his scent. Each item felt like a fresh cut, a reminder of how Jonathan valued nothing but profit. At one point, Jonathan snapped, "Can't you hurry it up, Mom? It's just stuff. You don't even have a place to keep it." I looked at him, then really looked. He was handsome like his father had been, but there was none of Robert's warmth in his eyes, only sharpness, only hunger. "I have a place," I said quietly, "and I'll take as much time as I need. These aren't just possessions, they're memories." He rolled his eyes and left the room. Alone in that gutted penthouse, I grieved not just for Robert, but for Jonathan too. For the son I thought I had raised. For the boy who once held my hand when he was afraid of the dark, who once kissed my cheek good night without fail. Where had he gone? Or had I blinded myself to who he truly was all along? When I finally finished, I walked through the rooms one last time. In the closet, half hidden, I found Robert's old leather messenger bag. Inside was a sealed envelope addressed to me, Susan, an extra copy of everything in the garage safe just in case. I clutched it to my chest. My clever, thorough husband. Even in death, he was still protecting me. As I left the penthouse for the last time, I felt lighter, though sadness clung to me. That home had held years of memories, but Robert had left me something better, a chance to begin again. The next day, with the envelope in my purse and Robert's plans in my heart, I drove north toward Carmel. The coastal highway opened before me like a promised cliffs, dropping into the vast Pacific sunlight, spilling gold across the water. For the first time in weeks, my breath came easy. When I pulled up to the cottage hidden behind tall cypress trees, I stopped and stared. It was small, yes, but beautiful stone walls, a garden blooming in quiet color, a wooden gate that creaked with charm. Inside, the air smelled of wood and ocean salt. The living room glowed with light from wide-paned windows. The shelves were lined with books Robert knew I loved. And above a desk in the study hung a painting, a replica of the Venice Canal, where he had proposed to me all those years ago. My knees buckled. The tears came again, but softer this time. Robert hadn't just left me money, he had left me home. That evening, as I sat in the window seat watching the sun set into the ocean, there was a knock at the door. An elderly woman stood there kind-eyed, holding a casserole dish. "You must be Susan," she said warmly. "I'm Margaret, your neighbor. Robert asked me to check on you when you arrived." The kindness undid me. I invited her in, and over tea she shared what Robert had told her, that he wanted the cottage to be not just a shelter, but a place where I could belong. That he had worried for me, worried that Jonathan's ambition would consume me if left unchecked. When she left promising friendship, I sat alone in the cottage and whispered into the quiet, "You thought of everything, Robert, even this." For the first time since his death, I slept peacefully. But peace, I would soon learn, would not last. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Jonathan's voice was tight, demanding. "Mom, where are you? I hired a private investigator. Do you think you can just disappear?" "What are you hiding?" I swallowed, steadying my breath. "I've found somewhere safe, Jonathan. Somewhere I can think." "You're being ridiculous. Dad left you nothing. If you've found something else, you'd better tell me." I ended the call before he could push further. But dread crawled into my chest. He was suspicious. He would come looking, and sooner or later he would find out. I knew then that Robert's test had only begun. I had settled into a fragile rhythm at the cottage, morning walks along the beach where fog rolled like a soft blanket across the shore, afternoons, learning the routines Robert had so carefully prepared for me, evenings, sitting by the stone fireplace, with tea and a book. It felt almost normal, almost safe. But beneath that calm, I knew a storm was gathering. Jonathan would not stay silent for long. Sure enough, one late afternoon, I pulled into the driveway after a quiet trip to the market and froze. Parked in front of the cottage was a sleek black SUV, its polished surface gleaming like a predator waiting in ambush. The license plate confirmed what my heart already knew: J. Campbell. My pulse hammered as I stepped out of the car, grocery bag trembling in my hands. And there he was, leaning against the gate, arms crossed, jaw set. His smile was thin, brittle. "Found you, Mom." I forced my voice to remain steady. "Jonathan, what are you doing here?" "Funny question," he said, pushing off the gate and striding closer. "I should be asking you that. Disappearing for weeks, ignoring my calls, hiding out in— what exactly?" "A secret cottage in one of the most expensive coastal towns in California." His tone dripped with suspicion, his eyes scanning the property like an appraiser already calculating its worth. I unlocked the door and stepped aside. "Come in. No need to make a scene for the neighbors." He entered, his gaze darting from the bookshelves to the furniture to the replica painting above the desk. Every glance was an assessment, every second a judgment. Finally, he let out a sharp laugh. "So this is why you vanished." A cozy little vacation home Dad somehow neglected to mention. Charming. I set the groceries down, fighting to keep my hands from shaking. "Robert bought this place years ago. He meant it as a gift. For me." Jonathan's eyes narrowed. "A gift, or another one of his little tricks like that garage?" The word hung heavy in the air. My blood went cold. He knew. "What do you mean?" I asked carefully. "I drove by," he said casually, though his eyes glittered with triumph. "That dump of a garage you got stuck with?" "Yeah." I peeked inside. Dirty windows, but not dirty enough. "You've got cars in there, Mom. Not just cars, vintage ones. Do you know what those are worth?" I tried to keep my face calm, but my heart raced. He had only seen fragments, shadows of what Robert had hidden. He didn't know the full extent, not yet. "Not— your father left those to me," I said softly. "And left me scraps," Jonathan snapped. "A penthouse that's falling apart, investments tied up in trust funds I can't touch. While you—" he gestured wildly at the cottage, "the invisible fortune he suspected, while you sit on millions in hidden assets." I poured water into the kettle, my hands steadier than I expected. "What exactly do you want from me, Jonathan?" "The truth for a start," he shot back. "Did you know about all this? Did you and Dad plan to humiliate me, to make me look like a fool while you held the real wealth?" "No," I said firmly, turning to face him. "I knew nothing until after Robert died. I was as shocked as you are now." His expression flickered, a moment of doubt breaking through his fury. "Then why keep it from me? Why hide in this cottage instead of telling me?" I swallowed the weight of Robert's words echoing in my mind. Your father wanted to test him, to see his true character. Because Jonathan, I said slowly after the will reading, you called me a useless old woman. You threw me out of my home. Forgive me if I didn't think you were ready to hear about Robert's plans. His jaw tightened, shame flashing across his face before anger reclaimed it. I was upset. People say things they don't mean when they're angry. Or perhaps I said quietly, anger reveals what they really mean. The silence stretched heavy and suffocating. Finally, I crossed to the study and retrieved Robert's letter, the copy I had found in his messenger bag. I placed it in Jonathan's hands. Your father explained his decisions better than I ever could. Read this. He took the letter like a weapon, scanning the words with growing tension. His face shifted with every paragraph, first disbelief, then outrage, then something darker. When he reached the section where Robert questioned his character, Jonathan's hands shook. He set the paper down with deliberate care, his voice dangerously low. So Dad thought I was selfish, materialistic, unworthy. He was concerned, I corrected softly. He feared what might happen if you controlled everything. He wanted to protect us both. Protect you, Jonathan spat. Not me. He trusted you with millions while testing me like a child. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? His words sliced through me, but I stayed seated calm. Jonathan, this isn't about humiliation. It's about responsibility. Your father believed character shows itself in moments of inheritance. He wanted to see who we really were. And you think you passed while I failed? His voice rose, fury and hurt mingling. He left you fortune and freedom and left me with debt and ruins. And you sit there lecturing me about character. I studied his face, the sharpness of his jaw, the shadows under his eyes. Beneath the anger, I saw something raw, almost childlike. Not greed, but pain. The wound of a son who felt abandoned by his father. It isn't about passing or failing, I said gently. It's about choices. About what you do now. He scoffed. What I do now is contest the will. All these hidden assets, secret trusts. It's manipulation, plain and simple. I'll fight this in court. I expected this. You'll lose, I said calmly. Robert's structures are airtight. Contesting will cost you money you don't have, and it won't change his intentions. Jonathan stared at me, breathing hard. Then his expression shifted, the fury cooling into calculation. Then let's compromise. Split it. Half of everything. That's fair. No, I said firmly, surprising even myself with the strength in my voice. I won't dishonor your father's wishes. What he left me isn't just wealth. It's freedom, independence, protection from exactly this. His face darkened. So that's it. You keep everything. I get nothing. That's not true, I whispered. You have what Robert intended for you. But if you want more, if you want to share in what he left me, then you'll need to prove you're worthy of it. Not through threats or demands, but through your actions. He stared at me like I had slapped him. You're holding me hostage to some moral exam. I'm honoring Robert's legacy, I said simply. Jonathan grabbed his keys, his movements sharp with anger. This isn't over, Mom. You'll regret crossing me. The door slammed, leaving the cottage trembling in his wake. I sank back into the chair, exhausted. Robert had prepared me for this moment, but nothing could have softened the ache of watching my son, my only child, look at me not with love, but with entitlement and rage. Yet beneath the anger, I had glimpsed something else. A boy still desperate for his father's approval. A son wounded by the belief that he had been judged and found lacking. That night, Margaret knocked on my door with lasagna and gentle concern. I saw your son leave in a hurry, she said softly. Is everything all right? I smiled weakly, tears welling. It will be somehow. As I ate her lasagna alone in the quiet of the cottage, I thought about Robert's words. Character reveals itself most clearly in moments of inheritance. Jonathan had revealed his. But the story wasn't finished. I had choices to make. About the cars, about the properties, about Jonathan, and about what kind of woman I would become in the wake of betrayal, wealth, and unexpected freedom. Autumn came to Carmel with a gentleness I hadn't felt in years. The mornings were cooler, the fog lingered longer over the cliffs, and the village streets thinned of tourists, until they belonged again to the locals. I found myself breathing easier in those months, as though the air itself was healing me. I planted roses in the small garden Robert had prepared, tended to the shelves of books he had so carefully chosen, and let the rhythm of the ocean steady my heart. Slowly, I learned to live without waiting for Jonathan's call, without the constant ache of rejection echoing in my chest. But even as the cottage soothed me, I never truly forgot the confrontation. Jonathan's words, his threats, his entitlement hung over me like storm clouds. Some nights I replayed the slammed door in my mind and whispered to Robert's memory. Was this your plan all along? To make me the arbiter of our son's character? To leave me holding not just wealth, but judgment? It felt cruel at times, as though Robert had handed me both gift and burden, and yet deep down I knew he had trusted me, perhaps more than I had ever trusted myself. 3 months passed before Jonathan reappeared in my life. But the warning came first not from him, but from his assistant. It was late afternoon, the sun slanting low over the cottage garden, when a silver sedan pulled into my drive. A tall, polished woman stepped out, portfolio in hand, her heels clicking against the stone path. She extended a card before she even introduced herself. "Mrs. Campbell, I'm Diane Reeves. I work with your son." Her professional composure couldn't mask the tension in her eyes. I led her into the cottage, offering tea. She declined. She sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, fingers tightening around her folder. "I'm here because Jonathan is facing some significant setbacks. He asked me to speak with you as he felt you might not take his call." A chill spread through me. "What kind of setbacks?" She opened the portfolio, sliding papers toward me. The penthouse renovations far exceeded estimates. Structural issues, code violations, expenses doubled. Simultaneously, one of Jonathan's major investments collapsed. A development project. Environmental reviews revealed contamination. Investors pulled out. He committed substantial capital, and now he can't cover the losses. Her voice softened, though the words remained clinical. "He's facing foreclosure, Mrs. Campbell. Without assistance, he risks losing the penthouse entirely. He asked me to tell you he needs help." I stared at the documents, numbers blurring before my eyes. Robert had warned me. He had predicted exactly this. Jonathan's reckless hunger, his obsession with appearances, his refusal to listen now, it was all unraveling exactly as Robert had feared. "And how does this concern me?" I asked, finally, my voice calm, though my chest ached. Diane hesitated. "Jonathan hoped you might consider offering support, financial support, to help him avoid bankruptcy." There it was. Not an apology, not reconciliation, just money, always money. I closed the folder, my hands trembling. "Tell Jonathan I've heard his request. I'll consider it." She blinked, clearly startled by the measured response. "Mrs. Campbell, the matter is urgent. Foreclosure proceedings could begin within weeks." "I understand," I said firmly. "But I will need time. That's all I can offer today." When she left, the silence of the cottage pressed against me. I sat in the garden until the stars came, Robert's letter heavy in my lap. "You knew," I whispered. "You knew this would happen. And now the choice is mine, to save him or to let him fall." The next morning I drove to the city. I needed to see for myself. The doorman, who still remembered me with kind eyes, let me pass without question. Inside the penthouse, my heart broke anew. It was gutted, stripped to studs, wires dangling like veins from broken walls, marble stacked carelessly in corners. Dust coated everything. The home Robert and I had cherished for 15 years had been reduced to chaos. Jonathan's vision of profit had left nothing but ruin. I stood amid the wreckage when the front door opened. His voice carried through the hollowed space, "Mom." When he appeared, my breath caught. He looked thinner, his sharp suit rumpled, his face drawn with exhaustion. The swagger was gone, replaced by something almost fragile. "I wanted to see it for myself," I said softly. He rubbed a hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from his boyhood when he was frustrated with homework. "Diane told you, didn't she, about the situation?" "She did." I gestured at the stripped walls. "This isn't what you promised when you told me about renovations." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Nothing ever goes as planned. The project failed, the money's gone, and now this." He waved helplessly at the ruin. "I overextended, Mom. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was smarter than this." For the first time in years, his voice held not arrogance but defeat. My heart ached. He was my son, my only child. But Robert's words rang in my ears. "If he proves himself unworthy, then this legacy is your shield, your freedom." Jonathan sank onto an overturned bucket, his shoulders heavy. "So, Have you decided will you help me? I met his eyes, the same eyes that once lit up when he ran to show me his school drawings. I'm willing to help, but not unconditionally. Not by writing a check to cover your debts. Relief and desperation flickered across his face. Then what? You'll come to Carmel, I said firmly. Tomorrow. We'll talk there. But Jonathan… I paused, my voice breaking with the weight of it. If I help you, it won't just be about saving the penthouse. It will be about saving you. That's the only condition that matters. He looked at me, conflict written across his features. Pride battled with necessity, arrogance with need. At last he nodded. Fine. Tomorrow. As I left the gutted penthouse, the contrast between that ruin and the peaceful cottage in Carmel cut me deeply. Jonathan had been given what looked like wealth, prestige, power. I had been given what looked worthless, a garage, a cottage. And yet here we were, our fortunes reversed. The next morning he arrived at the cottage precisely at 11, dressed in polished clothes, as though presentation alone could erase his collapse. I had prepared for him, setting the back patio with tea and light lunch. Your father left something for you, I said, handing him a leather portfolio. Inside were the financial assessments Robert had commissioned years earlier, predicting the very failures Jonathan now faced. He stared at the numbers, his face hardening. He knew all along. He tried to warn you, I said gently, but you wouldn't listen. Jonathan closed the folder with a snap. And what now, Mom? Do you plan to dangle his fortune in front of me like a leash? Am I supposed to beg? My voice shook but held. No, Jonathan, you're supposed to change. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything unsaid. For the first time, I wondered if my son still existed beneath the man Robert had feared, and whether it was already too late to save him. Jonathan sat across from me on the patio, the ocean breeze ruffling his neatly combed hair, his face a mask of control that couldn't quite hide the cracks beneath. For years, I had watched him negotiate boardrooms and charm investors, but here at my table in his mother's cottage, he looked less like a man of power and more like a boy backed into a corner. I poured the tea slowly, letting the silence stretch. Finally, he said, You've made your point, Mom. Dad gave you everything. He gave me scraps. I failed his so-called test. So what now? You keep living in secret wealth while I lose everything. His words cut deep, but I kept my voice steady. Jonathan, this isn't about scraps. Your father gave you a penthouse, an investment portfolio, a life most people would dream of. But he also gave you a chance to show who you are when faced with responsibility. And do you know what he saw? Jonathan's jaw clenched. He saw what he wanted to see. He never trusted me. No, I said softly. He loved you. He hoped you would rise to the challenge. But he prepared for the possibility that you wouldn't. The air between us thickened. He leaned forward, his voice trembling with something that wasn't just anger, it was pain. Do you have any idea what it feels like, Mom? To know my own father thought I was unworthy, to know he trusted you but not me. I studied his face, the boy and the man colliding in those tired eyes. For a moment, I glimpsed the child I once knew, the boy who had climbed into my lap after nightmares, who had begged me to stay at his baseball games until the last pitch. That boy wasn't gone. He was buried beneath ambition, pride, and greed. Jonathan. I whispered, this was never about worthiness. It was about protection. Your father knew I couldn't fight you if you turned hard, if you tried to control me. He gave me freedom so I would never be at anyone's mercy, not even yours. His hands tightened around his teacup knuckles white. So what now? Are you going to hold his fortune hostage? Make me grovel for scraps? I inhaled deeply, choosing each word with care. What I do with these assets will depend on you, not your threats, not your demands, but your actions. If you want me to trust you, Jonathan, then you need to show me you can change. For a moment he looked stricken. Then his face hardened again, pride reasserting itself like armor. You want me to prove myself at my age after everything I've built? That's insulting, Mom. No, I said gently. It's hope. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant crash of waves. He stood abruptly, shoving his chair back. This is pathetic. You think you're in control sitting here with your secret millions? But the truth will come out. And when it does, don't expect me to beg. He turned to leave. Panic flared in my chest. I rose quickly. Jonathan, wait. He froze, shoulders tense but didn't turn. My voice shook as I called after him. You are my son, my only child. I don't want to see you fail. I don't want to see you destroyed by pride. I want to see the man I raised, the man your father hoped you could be. That's why I'm giving you one more chance. Slowly he turned his face unreadable. I'll help you, I continued. Not by handing you money, but by giving you guidance. We'll meet with my advisors together. We'll create a plan. You'll have to accept oversight, Jonathan. Transparency. Accountability. No more secrets, no more risks. If you can do that, if you can humble yourself enough to accept help, then maybe just, maybe you'll find a way forward. His lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment I thought he would explode, reject me outright. But then something shifted. His shoulders sagged. His voice, when it came, was quiet. You don't trust me, do you? Tears burned my eyes. I want to. But trust has to be earned, Jonathan. And right now we're starting from nothing. He looked away out toward the horizon where the ocean shimmered in late morning light. Dad always trusted you more than me, he murmured. Because I never asked him for anything, I whispered. I stood beside him even when I disagreed. I didn't treat his love like a transaction. That's what he feared in you, that you valued him only for what he could give you. His head bowed. For the first time, I saw shame flicker across his face. I'll think about it, he muttered. And without another word, he left. I watched his car disappear down the winding road, my heart heavy but strangely hopeful. Perhaps this was Robert's plan all along, not to divide us, but to give Jonathan the chance to face himself. To force him to choose between pride and humility, between greed and redemption. Days passed, then weeks. Jonathan's silence stretched like a canyon between us. But one evening, as I tended the roses in the garden, my phone buzzed. A simple message appeared on the screen. Mom, I'm ready. Tell me what to do. I sank onto the garden bench, tears streaming down my cheeks. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't healing, not fully. But it was a beginning. And in that moment, I felt Robert beside me, his presence as steady as the waves. He had trusted me to carry this burden, to protect our family even in its brokenness. And though the path ahead was uncertain, I finally believed I could walk it. I closed my eyes, whispering to the wind, We'll be okay, Robert. Somehow we'll be okay. And so my story comes to you not as a tale of wealth, but as a testament to resilience. Betrayal by my own son nearly broke me. The secrets my husband left behind nearly crushed me. But within that pain, I found strength I didn't know I had. If you've ever felt discarded, underestimated, or betrayed by the very people you love, know this. Your worth is not defined by their cruelty. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as loss. Sometimes freedom is hidden in the places you least expect, like a forgotten garage or a modest cottage by the sea. If my story has touched you, if it reminded you of your own battles with family betrayal or resilience, I ask you to join me here. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, subscribe for more stories, and leave me a comment about what this journey made you feel. Your voices, your reflections mean more than you know. Thank you for listening to my story.